this is just a thought that I have. I don't know if it's because, I deal with, I came up in the coaching world because my father was a coach, and I realized a lot of my desire to be a coach or a trainer or an athlete was based on in getting his affirmation. I love my father so much that I did whatever he needed me to do, and we won 2 championships together. So, I did the job, but how much did I really want to do it? And could my talents have been used in a different place? So those are some of the things that I deal with. However, I also recognize that, being a coach, you're in the service profession. And you also are, you are a luxury when it really comes down to it. I mean, we know, and we talk and we sell ourselves as a necessity, right? To be able to have a guide in order to how to take care of your body. But as soon as someone gets tight on money, it's like, I'm not going to the gym, or I can't afford the trainer. We're the first ones to get cut. And so there's a vulnerability there. And then on top of that, it's extremely saturated. I just feel like there's a lot of trainers. We do live in sunny South Florida. So I wonder too if I would fare better in a different country, or maybe in a different state, and really clean up in a place like that. Right. Whereas I know that I'm worth a lot, but if there's 20 or 30 other guys that are willing to do the same job, even if it's not as good as I do it, maybe it's even better than I do it. The person's thinking about cost and benefit, and they're just like, shit, like, instead of going with $150 a session, or doing like a super big package for, $750 a month or something like that, like, I'll just hire, buddy that's not as good, right? And I'll make up for it, so I'll spend less. So it's trying to, you're always dealing with that. You're trying to sell your value, and but at the same time, not scare somebody away. So you want to get what you're worth, but you also recognize that not everybody has the same income. It's a funny balance, and it's so fickle, and it's really, really dominated by perception. It's almost like the music industry and the just the popular world in general.
Right.
Do you look the part? Are you shredded? Doesn't matter what you're doing to get shredded. Do you have, the hot babes, the car, and it goes for whether it's music, rap, training, whatever. Like, you tend to get a little bit more of the attention if you can look the part. So how I don't know how willing I am to look the part. I don't know. Do I look the part? Yeah, kinda. I have an athletic build.
Right.
I'm cut just like you are. You know what I mean? But we're not.
I'm not crazy looking or anything.
We're not freaks of nature. Like some of these dudes, and like even when I train and work with some of the pros, like, you just recognize, like, this is a different genetic specimen, and like God made them in such a way that they're going to be able to handle this kind of physical load for the rest of their lives. Like, they're meant to be athletes. And it's the difference between our body type and how they move. It's just so it's so vast that, like, I could play basketball every day for the rest of my life, eat, sleep, but I'll never be as good as LeBron, even if he's sitting on the couch that entire time. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's just like that cost benefit. What am I good at? What do I love to do? What do I have access to? And then this is kind of coming full circle in the sense of, like, I'm good at coaching. I have access to it because my father, paved the way for me. It was great. I'm super blessed. Do I love it? I struggle with that. And I'm not saying too, like, that. I'm humble enough to recognize that there are a lot of good trainers out there. But I think that I know a lot of things that a lot of people don't know.
No, you are honestly one of the best trainers that I have ever known. And it was weird because for me, by the way, I'm recording already.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think there was some value there.
Yeah, that was some heat right there. For me, I started, after I left high school, I didn't go to a big college, right?
Tell me if you want to go back to any of those topics, if we missed something or whatever. Okay. Yeah.
I graduated from high school.
Sorry. And I was going to say, when I met you, when I was working with you, back at Cypress Bay, that must have been several years ago almost now. And so, I was still fine tuning what I do, and still felt like, wow, and that was a really awesome compliment. And I appreciate that, I've come a long way since then too. And it's awesome that we had a chance to click in that time.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Like what I was saying is I graduated high school, whatever. Right. I didn't really pursue any type of athletics or fitness oriented business or space. But eventually I ended up back at LA Fitness because I wanted to do sales, right? So I read this sales book by Grant Cardone, Sell to Survive. I read that shit. I'm like,
I literally live right across from Grant Cardone's building.
Oh yeah?
I'm right across the street is Cardone Capital. It says I can look out my window. It's so funny. But I'm very familiar.
So I read his book. I'm like, damn, this is what I need to do. And at the time I was working at a bank and my friend was working at a gym and he was making money, right? Selling personal training. I'm like, all right, let me get a job there then. I just want to learn how to sell something, right? So I got the job there and then they're like, okay, well, you're going to have to go and work people out. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, you have to work people out, bring them back to the desk and pitch them on a program for 6 or 12 months. I'm like, okay, I've never been a trainer. I've never, coached anyone or anything like that. Yeah. But I knew how to work out from, wrestling and from the football, the one semester I did in football.
Yeah.
And so I started training people and I just started with the stuff that you would teach us. So I started with infant squats. Nobody does infant squats. You go to a gym and you ask somebody, can you do an infant squat? You're like, what the hell is an infant squat? But you make them do it and they're like, God damn, this burns. Like, well, why is this burning? Right? But it's such a basic fundamental exercise, but no one really knows about it. So I started with that, planks, ball slams, and in 15 minutes they would be toast. And I would bring them back to the desk and I was getting pretty good at selling training. Yeah. And it didn't hit me till like two years later. I'm like, I actually did have a trainer before. And it was you, it was Mark. Because I never thought myself like I needed a trainer or I for some reason never thought about it, but I did have a trainer and it honestly made the biggest change in my entire life because now that's all I do. I train people, I work out, and I focus on those fundamentals that you taught me. So I never focus too much on aesthetics, right? Of course I want to look good. Of course I want the big guns and big chest, but for me, that was never the most important thing. When I would start working out, I would start from my lower body up, right? Because that's where all the power comes from. That's where all your speed comes from. Agility comes from, right? So that's the first thing I would hit. I would start hitting legs. And then the second and third day, I do upper body and arms. Like my biceps are not really very developed for someone who's been working out for such a long time because I think I remember you saying how the bicep is not really an effective muscle for performance. So I'm like, what do I need big biceps for if they don't really do much? Even though they might be in other ways, for some reason that was in my mind. So I never focused too much on biceps because I didn't care too much about the aesthetics. It was more about performance and being agile, being powerful. That's what I really cared about. So, and then I started training people and then I actually got certified. So that was like my whole revelation.
What'd you go through?
The first certification I got was AAAI, and now I'm working on getting ACE certified, which is more intricate and more of a respected certification. Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, I want to introduce everybody to Mark Anthony Guandolo, to, all the people that, follow me. I have a couple of followers on my YouTube channel and on Instagram. And I always try to provide them as much value as possible when it comes to fitness and training. So I definitely always wanted to have you on. So thanks for coming on, Mark. And how's everything going with you, brother? How's everything been?
Absolutely. Pleasure. Actually, I'm faring very well during this whole house arrest. But I am prayerful, obviously, for the people that are actually suffering. But I am super thankful. I have the resources that I need, and I think that's the the bigger crux of what's actually happening right now.
Right.
To make yourself a little less vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yep. Awesome, Mark. Well, thank you for being on, and tell us a little bit about your story, man. How did growing up? Were you always into athletics? Were you always into fitness? Talk to me about you growing up and being an athlete, because I know you played football in college, right?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, man, this has been something that's been nonstop. My parents are both teachers and athletes. My mom was a gymnast. She was actually a Steeler cheerleader for some time too, back in the day. And then my dad, a solid athlete, but one of the best, football coaches in the state of Florida. And so that's where I come from. So a love for athletics, training, exercise was definitely instilled into me. I just saw the other day too, my aunt had some old footage. We took a family trip and I was literally working out on the treadmill. My grandfather was filming me. I must have been 4 or 5 years old and like really going at it. Wow. Being able to do 10 push-ups in kindergarten was like a thing for me. I remember being able to do it in front of everybody and like the PE coach being like, "Whoa." So it definitely started off like that. And then, so, little did I know that my father, he was going to make me his quarterback, whether I liked it or not. I don't
Really?
No, I just remember my mom, she wanted me to be a kicker. So I was I was kicking from like single digits all the way up until I was 12. Wow. And I was all right. But eventually when I turned 12, my dad put the ball in my hand. And it was just like this unspoken agreement that like, yeah, you're going to play quarterback and this is what we're going to do. And it just started happening. He started bringing me to QB practice for the high school kids. So he got me involved with that. And that's when he got the job at Chaminade. And he started making the transition into that area so that he could have me a part of the program and raise me in it. And it ended up that we did really well. We won 2 state championships together. My dad's gone to the state championship 5 times. The only 2 that he's won, I was on the team.
So what was that dynamic like, you being the coach's son and being the starting quarterback?
It's brutal. It was brutal. It wasn't people felt bad that I had to go home with that man. And he tried to do it. We did a good job of not talking about it at home, but of course, like if he was upset with the team or if I wasn't performing well, like, that unspoken silence, you feel it. Sometimes you could say something much louder with your heart than you can actually speak it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it was. And then also too, you don't want to get the stigma of like, oh, coach's son is playing quarterback. Mm-hmm. And the only reason he is because it's his daddy, so like he was just ferocious with me. Wow. And the expectations were insane.
And you felt the pressure.
Oh my God. Yeah. I felt the pressure, but it's funny because looking back at it, I really didn't know what I was feeling. Like you just don't know what is on your shoulders because you're naive. You're just a kid, like you don't really get it.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, it was, I was carrying an elephant. Wow. Straight up. So thank God we won 2 state championships together, and one I was the starting quarterback. So we had like the storybook ending together. And
that was your senior year when you were the starting quarterback and won it?
Yeah, starting quarterback senior year. That was 2006. We beat South Sumter 50-15. I had an incredible team around
15.
50-15. Yeah.
You're throwing bombs left and right.
I ended up separating my shoulder that year.
Damn.
This third game of the season. So I was playing with a separated shoulder for most of the year. I did end up missing one game. Dude, I managed, man. I had a really good team around me, great offensive line, great running backs. I was throwing to Kamar Aiken, who had
Nice.
he might have had 7 years in the league. And then a couple other guys that played college ball. Really awesome. So, I had a really good squad around me. And, I would go for like, I'd be like 5 for 7, 70 yards passing and a touchdown.
Wow.
Or like I go 7 for 10, 7 for 10, 150 yards and a touchdown. It was just like we only threw like 7 to 12 times a game.
I see.
But, I made it count when it was necessary.
Right.
And
manages the team. The quarterback is the leader of the offense.
Right. I touched the ball every time, but I wasn't like, dude, I'm 5'9" and a half, 5'10", 160 pounds. My hands aren't that big. Like, to put that more of a load on me, I just played my role. Nice. And I'm super thankful for the guys that I had around me. But I set the example. I ran the program. Like my dad could really just hand over, like, take care of him.
You were the assistant coach too.
I was the assistant coach. I knew what kind of expectations he had. I knew the type of intensity that he was looking for. And then he had started grooming me when I was 12 years old. So, I forget that it was funny when he was at Cypress Bay, he was trying to implement the wing tee with some guys. And it was hard for them to get. And I forgot that I was running the wing tee when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
So by the time I got to, high school, exactly. I could do all the steps, the handoffs, the fakes, all that stuff. Like I could do it in my sleep. And it's, it's a hard kind of hard offense to learn and really manage. The timing is really incredible. So those were really my skills, my timing, my organization, my leadership, my management. Nice. Like those were my strong points. But we had some running, like I had Willie Floyd that ended up going to FAU. Xavier Stinson went to FAU. A lot of guys that I could put most of the load on. Really carried it out of the team, and the line was huge. So it was really a really good fit. We had an incredible defense too. So
so you won the two chips, and then you went to college.
Yes.
Did you play in college?
So funny story. I think the people that are closest to me in my circle know this.
Yeah.
But to put this out there now is probably interesting to some people. I think that I actually did not want to go to Florida.
Really?
So I ended up at the University of Florida.
Got accepted and everything. You didn't want to go.
Well, I didn't even want to do the application process to begin with.
Jeez.
I was extremely interested in naturopathy or becoming a naturopathic doctor. I wanted to be an ND. I'm really into nutrition, healthy living lifestyle. And I really wanted to move in that direction. Mm-hmm. And the university that I wanted to go to was Bastyr University in Seattle, Washington. So it was like super far away. It was going to be really expensive, but it was definitely something that I wanted to do at the time.
Right.
And it's just my dad was not having it. My mom was super supportive, but she didn't
want to offend your father by making you follow what you wanted to do in a way.
Right. And then, but the crazy part is like the expense part, for some reason, like my dad was much more willing for me to, so I had some two Division III schools that were really interested, Hanover in Indiana and then Union College in New York. But, they don't give a lot of aid, so I would have gone to this college in New York and been able to play ball. But, it would have cost me like almost like $30,000 a year. It'd have been crazy.
Yeah.
And that was with aid. I was like out of state tuition. Plus it was like a semi Ivy League kind of like deal. And I was just like, and my dad was willing to somehow make that work.
Of course.
But, not go to, a naturopathic college and study that, it was just an odd time, so against my will, I did the college tour, and I decided like if I was going to go to school in Florida, that I would go to UF. I visited UF's campus. I fell in love with the campus, the tradition, all that kind of stuff. I was like, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
And we knew, obviously, my father's got a great relationship with a lot of college coaches. So we knew some of the coaches there. So I got an opportunity to try out. They need more bodies. They need to scout team players. So I had a preferred walk-on opportunity in August. So I basically went through 2 weeks of absolute hell.
What was that like? The walking onto a college team.
That was
UF out of all programs.
Dude, that was brutal. It was absolutely. It was very difficult. Basically, they're trying to make you quit. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to do it, right? So, every day is, your will to do something is tested, for sure.
Wow.
Because it's so much to handle. The physical labor and the physical intensity that they put you through. It's called the pit, and you couldn't fake it. I mean, it was hard.
Yeah.
I'll never forget too when I was in the pit, there was somebody that was injured at the time. His name was Lewis Murphy. You ever heard that name before?
Sounds familiar.
He's really good receiver at Florida. He ended up playing for Tampa Bay and the Raiders for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, if you were on the team and you were hurt, if there were other parts of your body that worked, you would go into the pit and work those out. So if your right shoulder was effed up, you would be working out everything but that spot.
Wow.
And it almost deterred you from being injured. You would rather not be injured.
Yeah.
It was definitely like a mental warfare tactic for sure. And I get it from a coaching standpoint. You don't want any dead weight. When you're trying to win a championship, you have to have guys be able to sacrifice themselves for the team. And so that was a really good way to do it. Was it savage? Hell yeah. And I remember Lewis, I remember meeting him and being like, man, this guy has a terrible attitude. But it was because he was absolutely miserable. He was hurt and also getting just destroyed in the pit every day. So I made it through that, made the team at University of Florida, and I was there for the entire fall when they won the national championship in 2006, 2007. Wow. I was on with Tim Tebow. Me and Tim are the same age. I think he would recognize my face. I don't know if he'd know my name though, but I did have some cool moments on the team that helped me stand out a little bit.
So how was that playing with Tim Tebow and all that? His whole hype and everything. How was that like?
Dude, Tim is an awesome guy. Super genuine. Trying to live a good Christian life.
So it's not fake.
I love him.
What you see on TV that really is him. He's not doing it for the cameras.
Oh yeah. And I think you get that because he had a really good upbringing. He was homeschooled, and I think that was a strength of his, that he wasn't corrupted by popular culture at the time. His parents raised him right at a young age, and then when they threw him into the fire and he went into the world, he was able to stick to his guns because he had such a solid foundation. Whereas the rest of us, it's a little bit harder when the foundation that you set isn't based on virtue.
Right. And so do you have any cool Tim Tebow stories you could share? Classified.
Any cool Tim stories? I have a lot of classified stories for so I spent most of the time going up against the defense. Okay. Right? So like me and Tim saw each other in passing, but I got to know Reggie Nelson. I got to know Reggie Lewis. Ryan Smith was the nickel DB at the time. I'd go up against him every day. Brandon Spikes, I ended up seeing him in Aventura Mall one time in passing and said, "What's up?" He remembered me. So I was going up against those guys and was built that relationship a little bit more. So, what's a more palatable story that I could tell? I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll think of it later. We'll come back to it.
All right, fair enough. So you did that. You were Tim Tebow, or you played on Florida for how many years? Were you on the team?
It was just 1 year.
1 year.
So 1 year of playing, and yeah, then I just decided like, I've had enough. I'm ready to just become a student, and I have a lot of other interests and desires and things that I want to explore. And yeah, I stopped after a year. Got some rings, so I had 2 state championships in high school. We ended up getting 3 rings that one year: SEC championship ring, BCS bowl ring, and then winning the national championship. So I have 5
rings on deck out there.
Yeah, man. So I'm super blessed. It was on really incredible. So yeah, I just decided to become a student and continue researching the things that I really love.
Nice. So you graduated from college, and then what was your plan? Did you want to get into training? Did you want to be involved with performance? What was that like after graduating college?
Yeah, so I studied applied physiology and kinesiology. Fancy for exercise science, and as soon as I got out, I got my CSCS, and I was interning at Bomberito Performance Systems here in North Miami, and a guy that I really learned the most from. And I decided that, after the internship, I wanted to build my own brand and start training people on my own.
Nice.
And so that's what I did. So I ended up having some private clients. I was working at Cypress Bay. I ended up getting involved with a small Christian school in Coconut Creek. And I was their physical education instructor there.
Nice.
And then all the while getting involved with, my love for food and nutrition and knowing where it comes from. I got involved with a Farm Fresh Food Club, and I was a distributor for them and did deliveries. And so I had my hands in a lot of different things out of college. Yeah.
So I remember when you were training us back in high school, that you would eat raw meat in front of in front of your I guess friends to make them go crazy. But the funny thing is now, when I buy meat, sometimes I'll do it too. I won't eat the whole piece, but I'll try like a little corn just to see, just see how it tastes. And it honestly tastes decent. I don't mind it that bad, because I think about it, when we were cavemen, we used to eat meat like that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as like what we're told, as far as what we can or can't eat and how we get sick, and all of that is up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I've tried so many different things that there isn't really this clear, consistent ideology. However, I will say that how palatable is raw meat?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost like sushi, really.
Right.
A raw fillet, it tastes better to me than like a piece of raw tuna.
Yeah.
But and now it's just about preference and what digests best for me. So yeah, I probably limit my raw meat consumption. But I tell you, I definitely tried it. I've tried high meat before, or fermented meat.
What's that? Fermented meat. What's the difference?
So there's like salami or cold is a traditional way to preserve and prepare meat without refrigeration, and it's also tastes delicious. So that would be an idea about it. Even like aging or dry aging meat, you'll get a mold sometimes that grows on the outer edges. Yeah. So there's a certain microbial content that is more beneficial than others. But I've even gone as far as like aging meat without any intent, no spices, no dryness, and still consuming it.
So how do you age meat? Is it a special equipment that you need, or?
So there's a reckless way to do it, and then there's like the traditional like butcher's way that you could make it much more palatable and enjoyable. Mm-hmm. The latter is obviously the better way to go.
Okay.
But I've eaten everything and I've tried everything and I didn't die. So I think there's something to say about that, and I felt fine.
Have you tried a bat?
What was that?
Tried a bat?
A bat? I haven't tried a bat.
Okay, good.
But I say I'm not scared of anything in particular. Okay. I'm the kind of guy that if I could have, I would have got on a cruise ship and went to Wuhan last week.
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, so anyway, that was kind of more the exploratory research of just trying things and seeing people's different diets. And yeah, I learned a whole lot from that. And that's really, if I wanted to bring a big takeaway today's talk, it would be building your own discretion, your own internal compass and how you do that. And it's basically, you listen and you consider what people are doing. And if someone says, hey, this helped me.
Yeah.
And if it resonates with you, well, then you try it. You don't necessarily take anybody's word for anything, but you try it. You go in slowly with it. You try a little bit more. You try to find your upper limit of how much you can actually consume, of whether that it's a supplement, whether it's a diet, whether it's a type of training regimen, any of those things. And so you're experimenting, and then you're thinking about, okay, how does this make me feel? Am I better, the same, or worse? You ask those three questions. Am I better, the same, or worse? And that's kind of how you guide your direction, so that you can actually become your own expert and stop relying on everybody else telling you what to do.
That's a great point you made, because there's so much information out there. There's so many people telling you keto, intermediate fasting, all meat protein diet. And for a lot of people, for the average person who hasn't been in the industry like you and I have been forever, they could get overwhelmed and not even try anything at all, because they're like so confused with what to actually, put their head on, that it's very overwhelming. So it's a good point you made.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's very inundating, and that's kind of obviously you've experienced it. We're all experiencing it, but the only thing you can do is you chip away at it a little bit at a time. You read a book, you like some of the topics in there, you see what the person's saying, and you try to implement it into your life, and you do little things at a time. But you also recognize you don't get so super judgmental about yourself. Like say you say like, all right, I like what this guy is saying, or this girl is saying, or this particular philosophy, and you start to execute on it. Or maybe it's not realistic for you to execute on. Maybe you don't have the time or the resources or the knowledge, or, all of those things are playing in. And so, what ends up happening is you see a particular philosophy or an ideology, and you think that maybe, oh, that's it. This is the thing that's going to put me on another level, or it's going to improve my performance, or I'm going to be the best version of myself. And then you can't actually execute. And you get super depressed, or you get let down, and then you're judging yourself. You're like, I'm lazy, or I'm like, and it's like, well, no, you got to back off of that, because that ends up, it just ends bad.
Yeah.
It's you get a bad taste. You could get depressed. It could increase anxiety. So it's not getting too religious about anything in particular. It's not about
getting too romantic about the way you do things too, because your body's changing too as you get older, and as your body develops or hormones change. Maybe for a certain period of time, maybe the keto thing does work. For maybe you go into menopause as a woman, maybe that doesn't work for you no more. So
100%. I say so, and I'm glad you brought that up. Like I usually tell people, the thing that makes you healthy one day might not the next. And you have to be able to recognize that and be able to make a pivot. And that's the talent. I'll never forget, this is like probably a really good story where I became a vegan for a long period of time in college. So I was actually a vegan during the state championship run my senior year.
Nice.
And
high school or in college?
In high school. High school. Now, I will say that the one time that I got injured in my entire athletic career, I was a vegan. So that year I did separate my shoulder, broke my collarbone. I was very underweight and extremely tired.
Wow.
However, I think there was a space for it spiritually. The amount of struggle that I had taken on top of like the pressure of being a starting quarterback and being the coach's son, but I was also super strict with my diet. So the discipline allowed me to be so obsessively focused about what I was doing that I was able to handle all of it.
Right.
I don't know if I made it harder on myself or not, but looking back at it, it was definitely bad for me nutritionally.
Really?
Then I got to Florida, and you know, you're low on resources. Mom and dad aren't cooking for you, so basically whatever's put in front of you, you're gonna eat it. You got a meal plan, and once in a while you get access to the training table as a walk on. So you eat what's in front of you. And I blew up. I got up to 185.
Damn.
And I put on 20 pounds. I went from 165 to 185 in September, October, in 3 months.
Wow.
And I never forget. So I definitely know what it takes to put weight on.
Yeah.
So I was 185 playing at Florida. Because I'll never forget when I got home for Thanksgiving. I was huge, and I didn't even know how big I got. And everybody was like, "Oh, you're huge." You know, I was like,
huge in a good way, like you were swole, or were you like?
Oh yeah. Dude, I was
okay.
single digit body fat.
Nice.
Just jacked.
Nice.
And then stopped playing football, and I was like, going back to the vegan world. This is what I really wanted to try. I really didn't get to execute when I was in high school. I felt like I had to cheat a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I went strict, hardcore vegan, nothing from an animal for 6 straight months. I probably should have stopped after a month and a half. But I was so religious about it. And
so romantic about it that you kept it
romantic, religious, convicted. And then on top of that, I was trying to tell everybody else to become a vegan.
Oh,
so I was living with my roommates, right? And I'm telling them, "Yo, you got to be a vegan," and they're just like watching from
Remember that guy?
Yeah, man, I'll eat a little bit more plants, but I don't know what about you? You know, what you're doing. And they literally just watched me wither away. Wow. Like I went from 185 back to 165 in a month. Boom, just lost it like super fast. The first month I felt good. I had like a boost in energy. Felt better sleep, more clarity. Those kind of things happened.
Yeah.
But then after that month and a half, I just tanked. Lost way too much weight. Didn't have the ability to exert myself in the weight room like I normally did. And then I started getting sick for long periods of time. Couldn't get over it. And then I started losing my drive to do the things that I like to do. And that's when I had that wake up call, like, why? So I asked myself, why did I become a vegan? Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to be stronger, better, healthier, and perform better. And I'm not even like, I got to a point where I was not well, and I wasn't doing the things that I like to do. And I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. Wow. And so the goal wasn't reached. And then what I ended up having to do is I went in a completely different direction. But I had to fess up to everybody that I was trying to convince to become a vegan. They're like, "Hey, this is a bad idea."
You gotta swallow that pill. So do you think it was just your body not accepting it, or maybe you didn't do it in the right way? What do you think it was? Combination of both?
It's
or for the lifestyle that you were living, maybe it wasn't.
Plants do not have all of the nutrition that we need to survive. Period. End of story. Unfortunately. And I know we would like to think it would be so much easier morally, right? Like, oh, an animal doesn't have to die and I have to eat it. But for me, it was never a moral thing. I just wanted to improve my performance. But you're missing a lot of different factors, whether it's B12, whether it's bioavailable sources of minerals, arachidonic acid, which is a particular fat you can't get in plants. You also can't get cholesterol, which is actually really important in your hormone profile. Like all of your hormones, the backbone is cholesterol. And so there's no cholesterol in plants. So if you don't consume any dietary cholesterol, your hormones suffer. So there's just so many limitations. And the people that do veganism right, quote unquote, right way, they supplement a lot. They're supplementing all the missing elements. And
so for an athlete that wants to go vegan, they're going to have to take all these other supplements to keep up their performance.
Right. So that's indicative of the deficiencies that it has. You know, so I was vegan for a while. It didn't work. I started to learn more about nutrition and recognized that there was a lot of things that I was missing in my diet. So I ended up, I saw a pre-med student on the bus way to class one day.
Yeah.
And he was reading a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It was written by Dr. Weston A. Price. It was about traditional cultures and specific diets and things that they consumed and what they ate and where they lived. And it was a really incredible book. And it brought to light that, these people ate what was available to them in their local environment. Sometimes it was plants, but every one of those cultures that thrived had a source of animal protein, and they had a sacred food, and a lot of the sacred foods were very, very fatty. And so there's such a wide realm of context.
Yeah. So what are some examples of sacred foods?
Sacred foods, like fermented cod liver oil is one of them that a lot of people are familiar with. But coastline cultures that had access to very cold water fish, that had access to cod, usually fish for the cod, extract the livers, let them sit and ferment. Eventually the oil would separate, the fat would separate from the liver, and it would rise to the top. They could skim that off and they would consume large amounts of it. And that provided them an incredible source of vitamin A and vitamin B. The Polynesians, they ate shark livers. So at certain periods of times they would, and it's not like an everyday thing, but there are certain seasons where they would spend, we're hunting sharks right now and we're going to consume these livers and we're going to give it to people that really need it. Whether it's pregnant women, growing children, and people that are trying to recover from injury. Like that was a sacred food for them. The Maasai warriors, they were a herding culture, basically. They had cattle. They made kefir from the milk, and they consumed the blood of the cattle raw. Like they had this arrow that they would shoot into the neck of the cow, and it had this stopper. So it would hit the cow's neck, stop, and they pull the arrow. So it wouldn't kill them, but just enough to let the blood out. Glug, glug, glug. They drink it down.
Crazy.
And look, I'm not saying that everybody's perfect, and I'm not saying that, but that's how they survive.
Right.
And they'll survive to this day doing that, so their discretion led them in that direction based on their circumstances, based on their environment. If this is what they had access to, they made the best of it, and they're alive, they're well, so I read that book, opened up my eyes. I ended up getting involved with, I wanted to get raw milk. I wanted to try raw milk. So I found a local farm in Ocala. I was getting raw milk.
Wait, you knocked on the door. Hey, I've been wanting to try some raw milk.
Well, there's a giant community of people that are into this. And there was a website basically that talked about where you can find farm fresh dairy. Mm-hmm. And so I looked it up. Nice. Did a deal with the farmer. I got to meet the farmer. I met the cow that I'm getting the milk from. I saw what they were feeding them. So that not only was I getting a quality product, but I started to become more connected to the resources that I needed to be well. And that's really healing for most people in general. The separation from us and where things come from is the crux of insanity and the lack of gratitude. Like gratitude, foundation of gratitude is completely based on knowing what was sacrificed to acquire what you're consuming, right? So like watching the animal die that you're going to eat is really difficult to do.
Yeah, my friend, he said he went to Brazil one time, and that his grandmother made him kill the chicken that they were going to eat. And he told me that after that, he was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, it changed his whole mindset on eating meat just based on the fact of doing that, killing his meal to eat it. It just changed his whole perspective. And he did start doing a more of a plant-based diet. He does eat, protein, chicken and stuff like that, but not at the level that he did before he had to do that. So that's
definitely puts you in check, and it would make you become vegan. I think there's a place for veganism, and there's times that you can do it for a temporary period, and it's different for everybody. But to be a vegan for giant periods of time, you're going to become deficient in certain things. But getting back to the idea of like, watching the death of the thing that feeds you, like that's a really giant concept that turns you from a child to an adult. You recognizing that something has to die so that you can live. And that is really heavy for people to digest.
Even a lot of adults nowadays, that never crosses their mind. They just think, oh, it's just,
right.
I go to Publix, it's packaged, I didn't cook it. But that was a living, breathing thing.
Right. And it didn't necessarily want to die. But so then when I sit down and I do eat that food, like the gratitude that I'm overwhelmed with is intense because, I just recognize that this thing is the death of this thing is allowing me to continue to live.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes sense why we say grace before we eat. The other day I was eating and I was thinking about that. I'm like, why do we pray before we eat? And I started thinking about, people back in the day, which they would have to hunt their food. It makes complete sense because their food didn't always come easy. So when they were able to hunt something and kill it, it made sense for them to take a moment, say thanks, to be able to eat that animal, to continue to live on. So that was an interesting thought I had the other day.
100%, man. So yeah, you just hit on the crux of conjuring the spirit of gratitude. So traditionally a hunter-gatherer would have to, first find that animal that they needed to sustain themselves. They would have to learn about it. They would have to hunt it, survive the hunt, kill it, bring it back, prepare it. And so they went through this entire process, and they also sacrificed a lot to get it. So the amount of gratitude that they experience is so exceptional. It's so much more than I think that we as, living in the Disneyland of the world, America, super fortunate. And, we grow up as kids and mommy and daddy tell us to, hey, make sure you say thank you. And you just say it like out of habit. Right. But are you really feeling gratitude? What did you sacrifice to acquire what you're about to eat? Because remember, you're a taker. And so once you start separating that responsibility from people, that's what erodes the spirit. That's what erodes your ability to actually experience true joy.
Interesting. And it all comes from what we're eating. A huge part of it comes from what we're eating.
That's the first spot. Yeah, that's the beginning step. And I think a lot of people can be reached in that realm because food is such a, everybody needs to eat. Everybody loves food. It's cool to be a foodie.
And it's the biggest pleasures that we get,
It's a pleasure. And the way that it seems that the beginning was designed was that there was an extreme amount of responsibility tagged to something that was pleasurable.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's shelter, like there's things that give us a lot of pleasure, but there's also a lot of responsibility involved in acquiring those things and consequences that come along with doing those things. And once we separate the responsibilities and the consequences of those things, our ability to be grateful for them diminishes. And now we're just shoving food in our mouth, or we're just hooking up with people.
Yeah.
Or we're, it's really diminishing the experience that we ought to be having.
It's a great point. Man. Great point, guy. You just spent a lot of game right there. I get a lot of people thinking. Now I'm thinking, damn, maybe I might consider this vegan stuff. Maybe not for long, but go through periods, because that's something I've never really considered, going vegan.
Yeah.
But it definitely is something to think about.
It's cool to do it. I'd say like a couple times a week.
Yeah.
You pick 2 days out of the week, like Wednesdays and Fridays, I'm going to go vegan. Or like, when you're not going to be around people, right? It's like Tuesday, Thursday, you're vegan, and then you open it up for a more well-balanced diet. So you tend to reach for some things that you don't normally consume when you're only thinking about plants.
Yeah.
And so that's the good part about it. But being vegan only, I personally did not find any health in that.
Interesting. So what would you recommend for an athlete who wants to be vegan and perform at a high level?
I would bring up all those points and those topics
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of just went over. So I would have them consider a lot of those things. I would say that being vegetarian or vegan a few times a week or once a week is okay. When you're not training or under high stress, could be a better time that you experiment. Maybe you can go longer periods without it.
Yeah.
But recognizing and being super thankful that you have the resources that you need to be well. I would say the other thing that, when we're building our own internal compass, building our discretion, to try and do things that you don't normally do. So if vegan is one of them, jump into that.
Mm-hmm.
Dive into that hard enough to figure out, well, what's my upper limit of veganism? How long can I go without animal foods? When do I start noticing a difference in the quality of my life? And then you could start to, what? It's good for me to be a vegan one time a week. That's it. Or maybe I pick 2 weeks out of the year where I'm straight vegan only, and then I go back to my normal diet. The other thing you do is, I think a good way to express navigating diet is to break it down with more of like an Eastern mentality, in the sense of you're looking at flavors and tastes. So there's 5 main flavors. You have sweet, you have salty, and savory, which pretty much dominate our palate.
What's savory?
Savory is the taste of meat.
Okay.
So yeah, salty, sweet, savory, they're meat flavored, and then you have sour and bitter. And sour and bitter, we tend to overlook a lot. And the few sour and bitter things that we consume also tend to have some side effects, like beer and alcohol and coffee. They can be good in a balanced diet, but they also have some downsides to them.
Yeah.
So other bitter and sour foods, like citrus, limes, lemons, vinegar, a lot of things that people don't eat, a lot of chunks of raw ginger, turmeric. A lot of people, like, this whole situation happened recently, and like the ginger got all bought out really fast. People are starting to catch on to these things. Raw fresh herbs are really bitter and cleansing, and they're very aromatic as well. If you break off a piece of basil, it smells refreshing. Yeah. Like a chunk of celery smells clean. Like fresh celery smells like, smells like a clean room. You know what I mean? Like, so if you think about when you consume those things, you're also going to smell better internally, because that's what you're consuming. And not to say that you don't need meat, but the breakdown of protein causes some reactions that don't smell so good. It's the same way with the breakdown of sugar as well. So lean in towards and build your discretion by doing things that you don't normally do. So when I usually suggest, like, hey, when you make your green drink, use chunks of raw ginger, use fresh basil, fresh mint, back off of the sweet a little bit. Don't put a ton of bananas and a ton of berries in there. Maybe put like 1 apple in there, so you get a little bit of a sweet flavor, but you're not inundated with the same taste that you're normally consuming. And I think there's something to say about strong flavors in general are indicative of a nutritional imbalance. Because if we think about the most balanced food for a human being is breast milk. Obviously, you only get access to that when you're a child, hopefully, but it's very neutral tasting,
right?
Because it's so well balanced. It's got all the glyconutrients that you need. It has the perfect protein amount. It's got the right fat. It's super hydrating. It's very, very neutral flavored. And so if you want to heal, or if you want to perform better, I would start to lean towards creating more of a bland or neutral diet. But who wants to do that? Everybody, it's all about how much flavor can I pack into this small amount of food. And it's tasty, it's gourmet, it's pleasurable.
Yeah.
But how healthy is it for us? And that's what I'm trying to consider, or just seeing in general. Like that's what we're doing. We're eating really, really rich gourmet style food on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to spend most of our time in a very neutral environment, even more so sour and bitter, because nobody wants to deal with the sour and bitter. Sour and bitter is what exercise is to the body, is what sour and bitter is to the digestive system. So if you consume none of those things that are sour and bitter that I mentioned, your digestive system is going to suffer, and you're not going to really absorb the nutrients that you're consuming.
Wow.
So that's kind of the overall health perspective for an athlete, as far as what to consume.
Got it.
As far as training,
I was gonna ask you that next. What are, like, I say, the top 3 exercises that an athlete, should focus on if they want to improve their performance?
Yeah. So the exercise question is unlimited. Like there's just an unlimited amount of exercises, and it's also dependent on the access that you have and the place that you train. What kind of machinery do they have? What kind of time do you have? What are your goals? So I think it's important to recognize. I guess I want to bring up like maybe a paradigm that maybe is really interesting to people. That, for instance, resistance, like weight training, obviously is going to help improve, or is meant to help improve your strength. Assistance helps improve your speed or your explosive power. So a good example. So resistance, most people are familiar with a bench press or a squat. All right. So you're adding weight, you're producing force with your body. That's going to increase your strength. Now, if you want to do it faster, you need some assistance. So like, say if you wanted to jump higher, I see a lot of people, attach bands to themselves that pull them down, or they will put a weighted vest on and jump, or something along those lines. And they're still in the realm of strength training, which is necessary, but they're not going to see the biggest difference in their vertical leap unless they give themselves assistance. Okay. So meaning like a trampoline. So if they spent much more time on a trampoline, they would probably see a better difference or an improvement on their jump, because now they're jumping higher than they normally jump. It's giving them more assistance in the direction they want to go. It would be like maybe an overspeed trainer. So if you're trying to improve the speed of your run, you would attach a pulley to somebody and pull them faster than they normally would go. Right? There is some risk obviously involved in that. So you want to build your conditioning and your strength prior to jumping into that realm. But I think it's a good topic to talk about and think about, because I think that those are 2 things that people want to improve. I want to improve my vert. I want to improve my speed. One aspect that you're probably not looking at is the assistance part of it. Still do the sled runs. Still do your resisted high knees, or your banded movements where you're being held back. They're all necessary. You're going to build the strength and conditioning aspect of your system. But now, once you build that, now it's like, okay, how do we push past that? And you do that by giving yourself assistance, getting on a trampoline, getting on a pulley. Does that make sense?
That's a great. I never thought about assistance, as something to add or a way of working out to improve something. So it's very mind blowing for me right now.
Yeah.
So how would you be able to add assistance without, let's say if you want to jump higher, what would be a way to, add assistance without a trampoline?
Okay, Good question. So yeah, I found two really useful things, a band or a TRX. So if you didn't have your trampoline, you basically would attach the band much higher above where you are. You would hold it so that it's taut and then jump and allow it to sling you up. Super fun, but you're also getting that assistance. So you're still jumping as hard as you possibly can with some assistance. And then as you descend, you're also getting some assistance on the land as well. So it helps cushion some of the landing. If you use the TRX, you could do, assisted jumps with the TRX. So you could do like squat jumps. You're holding onto the TRX. It's far out in front of you, higher than you are. Jumping as high as you can, but using that fulcrum that the TRX will create to get yourself up and then land. So those are some things that you could do.
Nice. Awesome, bro. Thank you so much, man, for coming on and putting me on game and going into, especially the food topic. Because personally, that's something that I've been wanting to explore more and understand more thoroughly. So I guess it was the universe helping me out. I didn't know you were that deep into it. I know you were, of course, knowledgeable on nutrition and like that, but you definitely broke things down, and not just as a way of eating, but almost as a spiritual thing too, because that's a huge aspect of, why we do the things that we do, why we eat the things that we do. And it's very important to put, thought into what you're eating, where it comes from, and what it's going to do to your body. So thank you, man. I appreciate everything. And where can people find you, and where can they reach out to you?
So I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, at the Mark of a Champion. You can search me, Mark Anthony Guandolo. I'm on Facebook as just like my personal profile. And then I have a YouTube channel that you can actually access a giant database of exercises and workouts and field scripts. There are a bunch of demonstrations. Yeah. So there's a lot of content that I put out. And I'm here. I'm reachable through all of those platforms too. You could message me and we can go from there.
Awesome, brother. Awesome, man. Well, thank you, man. This was awesome for me to do. You were my first trainer. You built my basics as, a fitness professional and as a trainer. So I always want to give you, of course, credit where credit is due. And I would definitely do this again sometime for sure.
100%. Anthony, thank you for having me.
Awesome, brother.